Hi there, this is Solitaire Ronan from Solitaire Ronan Films, and welcome to another double take. And today's double take is of John Frankenheimer. Now, Frankenheimer is one of those directors that you feel really needs a great script and great actors to do his best work. For me, he's not an auteur. I think I had him in my director series as kind of a solid technician. He was born in 1930. He signed up for and was a part of the motion picture squadron in the Air Force. And then he went into television and then started in films with Burt Lancaster. And then he made several really good films, two of which I'm going to talk about. Perhaps not the two that everybody else talks about. But he made The Birdman of Alcatraz, then The Manchurian Candidate, 7 Days in May, The Train, Seconds, all back to back to back to back. He also made Grand Prix, James Garner. He did The French Connection 2, but then later in his career he was the director that was supposed to fix Richard Stanley's Island of Dr. Moreau, which didn't quite work out. And he also made Ronin with Robert De Niro and Jean Reno late in his career. And then he died in 2002. But it's really those early mid-60s films that he is or will be remembered for. But the two I'm going to talk about are 1964's 7 Days in May, which has recently just got a Region B Blu-ray release. I know it's available Region A and Warner Home Archives. This is a HMV Premium Collection Blu-ray, which is a wonderful print. It's spine number 98. For anybody that's interested in such things. And the other film I'm going to talk about is 1966 Seconds with Rock Hudson, which is one of my favourite films of all time. Not that 7 Days of May isn't, because they are both stunningly good films. For me, I've always preferred 7 Days in May to The Manchurian Candidate, but that's just me and I'm just strange. 7 Days in May was based in a book. Actually, both films are based in a book, and strangely, or perhaps not that strangely, Rod Serling of Twilight Zone fame did the screenplay for 7 Days in May. This stars Burt Lancaster, who's in top form, almost in J.J. Hunsaker territory, and Kirk Douglas. And it's about essentially a military coup that's going to happen in the United States by a general played by Burt Lancaster, who is so dismayed at the president, played by Frederick March, who gives a fantastic turn, by a peace treaty signed by the Russians. and this drives Burt Lancaster, not necessarily to drink, but past to drink, and he decides to have a coup. And Kirk Douglas, who is the Colonel Jiggs, it's a strange nickname, but never mind, he kind of gets a feeling that something odd is going on, and he goes to the president, and the president has a really wonderful cabal of aides. Edmund O'Brien, who's a slightly tipsy Georgia senator, the wonderful George Macready, who we all know from The Big Clock and Paths of Glory, Martin Balsam, of course, he was in pretty much every film that was ever made in the 60s and 70s, and there's even an uncredited turn by John Houseman as an admiral. It's such a great script, and it kind of makes you harken back to those days when Hollywood in the 60s and 70s made intelligent films that you actually had to pay attention to. You had to actually pay attention to conversations with people, the way people are arranged in the frame tells you their relationship with each other. It does a really good job because there's a lot of military jargon, but it's explained in a way that you feel as though they're not just explaining it in exposition. So an acronym will come up or a term will come up and it might not actually be referred to or explained in the same scene. It's maybe a few scenes later where an explanation for it is given, or we see what it actually means. And it's never kind of, okay, we're now going to give you the exposition. You're not beaten over the head with it. Frankenheimer's camera, the framing, is quite beautiful. There is a little bit of Kubrickness in the framing. Lancaster and Kirk Douglas are just absolutely fantastic. The whole cast is wonderful. Ava Gardner turns up as a slightly tipsy ex-girlfriend of Burt Lancaster who has incriminating saucy letters that the president may or may not use as all his options of trying to stop Burt Lancaster kind of get whittled down. Again, it's a film where there's no explosions, there's no car chases, but it's compelling. It is just an absolute joy. Lancaster, like I said, it's right up there with J.J. Hunsaker from Sweet Smell of Success. It's just such a cold, assured performance. There's a scene later on in the film with Lancaster and Frederick March alone in the Oval Office, which is just so beautifully written and so beautifully played. I do feel, it's maybe just me, but I do feel that 7 Days in May is kind of the forgotten film of Frankenheimer around this period, because obviously Birdman of Alcatraz and The Train and The Manchurian Candidate kind of get a lot more publicity, and perhaps people find 7 Days in May a little bit dry, but it's just so good, so well acted, that if you haven't seen it, I certainly urge you to pick it up because it's fantastic. But it's nowhere near as good as Seconds from 1966. This is also from a book. This is Eureka Masters of Cinema number 122. It's also available in Criterion. And this has a wonderful print, and it's got 2 commentaries. There's also a video appreciation by Kim Newman, who is one of my favourite critics. And again, this is just an essential purchase. If you haven't seen the film before, go buy it and prepare to be astounded. I think I saw this on Moviedrome in BBC Two. I could be wrong, but again, it was one of those wonderful late night BBC Two experiences where you just watch a film that you've never heard of before and you're just blown away by it. Again, it's a really simple story, well ahead of its time. It's about an older gentleman near a retirement age, played by the wonderful John Randolph, and he is stuck in his life of commuting to and from work, feeling worn out by the time he gets back from work. I can certainly relate to that. And he would quite like a bit of adventure. And he gets phone calls in the middle of the night from an old friend. And he ends up hearing about this company, which is just called The Company, who promise you a new life and a chance to begin again. I mean, I'm not going to go into total detail of what happens, but it is essentially about changing your life for the better, and it goes to very dark places. He is essentially given a new life, a new history, and a new face, who happens to be Rock Hudson, as you may have guessed by the poster with Rock Hudson all over it. Rock Hudson's performance is the best performance he ever gave. We all know now that Rock Hudson had a lot of secrets, and you really feel that he just lets himself go as far as paranoia and you can feel him being uncomfortable in his own skin. It's just a jaw-droppingly good performance by him. You could argue the middle of the film maybe meanders a little bit as he gets in with a bunch of hippies, and that perhaps ages the film, but that's pretty much the only bit that ages the film. There's a wonderful nightmare scene in it. It is one of the darkest films you'll ever see. It was shot by James Wong Howe, who did Sweet Smell of Success. It's ravishingly beautiful black and white. It's just one of those films that's just essential if you're a film fan. Or maybe it's just me. But it's just so good. Again, Frankenheimer's choice of angles and, close-ups of like 3 people or 2 people in the frame, and the composition of where they are in the frame is just wonderful. But again, you feel these films, Frankenheimer was surrounded by really good talent, really good scripts, and he takes advantage of that. and these are just stunning films. Again, I'm not going to talk too much detail about Seconds, apart from just go get a copy if you've never seen it before, and be prepared for just an amazing film. Murray Hamilton even turns up as somebody who works for the company. It is quite amusing, the fact that their cover is an abattoir. Obviously Murray Hamilton, the mayor from Jaws, gives another sweaty, nervy, jumpy performance. It's just such a great film, and you can see why I believe it was a box office disaster. Not a disaster, just didn't do very well, because I don't think people were ready for the darkness. Because again, maybe it's just me, we've all thought or wished we could have another life, we could be another person, but again, be careful what you wish for. I think that's the moral of the story. So thank you very much for watching. Please let me know in the comments below if you've seen these two films and what you think of them, or what John Frankenheimer films from the early to mid 60s you prefer. And hopefully we'll see you again for another episode of Double Take. This is Solitude Ronan from Solitude Ronan Films, saying thank you very much for watching, and farewell.